is essentially about the investment flow and scalability of projects for blockchain and metaverse. And the lineup is all-star. I would like to introduce a moderator for this panel, Heidi Pease, who's head of investment products for Wave Financial. Hi, Heidi. Well, happy International Women's Day, everybody. Make a round of applause. Oh, you're using this, okay. Would you like to come on stage? I'll hold your drink, no worries. I'll hold your water. Would you like to come on stage and introduce your panelists too? I don't see Carl though. Let me go get Carl. Would you like to come? Sure. Yeah, please go.
Hi, everybody. Is it good? You can hear me? No? Yes? Okay, good. It's a pleasure to meet you all. I'm super excited to welcome our panelists. Give me just 1 second to sit down. Hope you're all enjoying the conference. Thank you. As Olga mentioned, my name is Heidi Pease. I'm the head of investment products for Wave Financial. We are one of the top registered investment advisors in the United States. We are dedicated 100% to crypto and digital assets, and we're registered with the US SEC. We've launched several funds, including an NFT fund, so that's part of the reason why I'm here today is a little bit about, because of the expertise that we have started with NFTs. So with that, I would love to introduce our panelists. Please come up. I think we're waiting for one more to join us, Carl. So as we wait for Carl, please have a seat. Let me go ahead and have each of you, if you don't mind, introduce yourselves. A little bit about, provide your name, introduce yourselves, and maybe if you're working on any relevant projects within the metaverse space and or a little bit more about your company. So Anton, go ahead and start.
So pleasure to be on the panel, and my name is Anton Golub. I'm the CEO and founder of flovtec. It's just very simple. flovtec is a market maker for digital assets based out of Switzerland. So that means we provide liquidity to exchanges, coins, token protocols, and foundations. And we agreed actually before this is going to be a very provocative panel discussion. So look forward to that with friends actually. And me coming from Switzerland, I have the privilege to be neutral most of the time. So this is my introduction. So,
by the way, I've asked the panelists to get into a little bit of fighting, so.
Happy to do that, yeah.
Okay.
Hi. Yeah, it's on. Hi, Matteo, Dante, Perruccio. I'm also with Wave Financial, so a colleague of Heidi's, and she explained what we do. I'm president responsible for international, and I guess my role in this will be to be the oldest panel member and bring a little context to the conversation. And I'm Italian, so I don't have to be neutral at all. Thank you.
I'm Karthik, Iyer. I run a company called Blockchain Monk, but I'm also part of the P2P Foundation where Satoshi published the white paper, so one of the first human beings to mine crypto. I've been trading crypto since 2011 from Mt. Gox, early investor in a lot of projects. I also run a fund called Coin Stratagem. It's a Web3 fund. I was a partner at Genesis Block before this, so we've been investing in NFTs and Metaverses for quite some time. And in fact, early investor in CryptoKitties and quite a few other projects. So very excited to be in this panel. Looking forward to sharing insights.
Thank you. Hey, Carl.
My name is Carl. Sorry for being late, but it is Dubai, so I'm used to being late by now. I have a YouTube channel. I'm a crypto entrepreneur and investor. I have invested in hundreds of crypto companies in the past couple of years, and I have my own companies as well. And I love crypto. I love Bitcoin. That's why I'm here.
Great, thank you all. So let's start and talk a little bit about the metaverse. We've heard, according to MarTech Alliance, that the metaverse industry already represents about 47 billion, but that by 2025, it could be 800 billion. And obviously, we've seen a flurry of activity from Microsoft purchasing Blizzard at about 69 billion, and we all know Facebook changed its name to Meta. In addition to that, Apple has its own related devices that we expect to see coming out very soon. With that said, though, I'd love to hear from the panelists on What is the metaverse and what applications do NFTs have in the metaverse? And then, Anton, I'll get to you a little bit about infrastructure, but I'd love to start off with Carl.
Yeah, I really do believe that Metaverse is the next extension of the internet. I think that we're all going to be using the Metaverse in maybe 10 years, 15 years, just like we're using, I don't know, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok today. It's all going to be integrated in our lives. Of course, it's going to be the younger generation to adopt it first. I'm sure some of you guys here are not using like TikTok and stuff because it's like the younger generation. But that's the thing, the younger generation, they're always first with everything. They take it mainstream, just like the young people were using Facebook in the beginning. Now it's the old people using it. Now the young people went to Instagram, but actually the young people are already on TikTok, and now the old people are on Instagram, and Facebook is dying.
Can you say older people, not old people?
Yeah, what is
I don't want to step on any toes here. I'm not going to give any numbers, but I think the younger people, I don't know, 3-year-olds that are growing up with an iPad in their hands, they are the first people to go into the metaverse. I think the first application, because it's just like learning languages. A 3-year-old, they learn a language like this. For me, if I'm going to learn Russian now, it's going to take some time. So I think that's the reason why the young generation adopts things faster.
Yeah.
I wanted to add to that. I think I heard several panels today talking about, mentioning Facebook in the context and about how Facebook, in my mind, Facebook is already a type of metaverse. I mean, it's obviously doesn't involve all of the technology and artificial intelligence that's going to come to play in it. But, if you think about it, I've had many friends my age who say to me, well, what is this metaverse? I said, well, who cares? And I said, well, why do you care? I was talking about this last night at a cocktail. Why do we care about a photograph of our, plate of spaghetti at a restaurant we send to 50,000 people, and then if they say they like it, we feel good about it? It's exactly the same emotional connection, but it's going to be even more powerful because it's going to give us the ability to interact in that world and bring our plate of spaghetti to those people and sit around the table with them. So I just find it interesting how generationally we struggle so much with the idea of it, but we're living it. And it's I guess it's always that way, but I totally agree with your point about young people. They don't have that division at all between the virtual and the real and what has value.
So Matteo, do you think that as the metaverse becomes more developed, that the old people will be a part of it as well?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I could see, definitely, I could see, because it's going to have, we often in this conversation talk about, and it's natural because it started from the artistic/gaming side of the conversation, but the metaverse can be applied to all sorts of things. And I think, we may talk about this, but, there are cities that are setting up, twin cities in the metaverse in order to ease certain administrative burdens for their citizens. So I can see in a world of, my 92-year-old mother struggles to do all kinds of things that she could easily do virtually. Obviously, she wouldn't have the technological acumen, but if we find ways to do that, I think that the metaverse is going to be used by everybody eventually. I don't think I'll be around to see that, but eventually it'll be the way that people interact for the most part.
Great. What do you think, Karthik?
I mean, the value of time, right, is that you spend a lot of time thinking about it when you start this in the space very, very early. So the metaverse is a new interface. I see it as an interface to connect to the internet. It's not new. So Neil Stephenson spoke about it in Snow Crash in the 90s. So it was imagined in the 90s, but now we have the technology to render these metaverses. We have the computing power, we have the storage power and all that. And I feel, the world is going from 6 billion people to 10 billion people. If everybody wants to own a house, if everybody wants to own a car, imagine, the amount of burden that we put on the world. So I think the metaverse is the logical extension to this reality where the next generation will be happy owning virtual houses, owning virtual cars. I mean, imagine the amount of carbon footprint that we would save, reduce, if people didn't have to go to physical events. So I think the metaverse is a much, much bigger idea. And it's part of this great reset philosophy, which I completely agree. I mean, I think this is where we're going to, because we're going to destroy ourselves, as a species. My hometown, which in the south of India, got flooded. It's never happened in 100 years. Some of the biggest cities in the world are getting flooded. The coastal towns are going underwater. So we have to, disrupt our patterns. And as Einstein says, you cannot solve a problem at the same level of consciousness. You have to go to a much higher order of consciousness. So I think this is what we're trying to do with the metaverse. We're trying to, invent a new way for human beings to interact and be happy, because that's the most important thing at the end of the day, right?
You mentioned that this is not new, that really the concept started in the 80s and 90s. And I have to say, if any of you are Star Trek fans, there was a holodeck, and I remember just thinking, wow, how amazing would it be that we could interact with avatars or persons from all around the world, or universe for that matter. And it's so exciting to see that the development, and I think 100% you're absolutely right, this is going to allow for connectivity of people from all around the world that we've never seen before. How about you, Anton?
So I'm happy as a Swiss panelist then to kick off the disagreement. So just first to make one point. The moment older people start joining Metaverse is the moment it stops being cool. So just to say that. And I think you all remember the moment my parents joined Facebook, I was out of that place. Yeah. So I think we have to be realistic here. The innovators, the young people, the cool people, they're kind of hop off where's the next best thing, and kind of the older ones, the parents, the friends, they kind of come a bit later. So this is kind of how I would kick it off. Now, because Facebook was mentioned several times now, I mean Meta, how we call it now, I would really like to throw out a provocative statement, is that Facebook is not building a metaverse. Facebook is building an infrastructure on which top you will build metaverses, and a lot of other companies like the ones that are presenting there will build applications on. So if Facebook wanted to say the truth what they're doing, they would rename themselves to Infra, not to Meta, because they're building an infrastructure for that metaverse. Now, you can argue, have we seen this before in the crypto space? And we have seen it actually. So quite a few years ago, the FAT protocol thesis came out by Union Square, which is one of the biggest general VCs in US, who basically stated the protocol will be more valuable than the applications. And kind of what you look at, if you go outside, you take a look at these companies, they're all building applications. So if I was an investor, maybe to open up that discussion, if I was buying Meta's shares today, I would be investing into infrastructure for the metaverse. But if we're maybe investing into these companies here, we're investing into applications that are going to be on top of that. So happy to open a discussion like that.
I have to respond to that. 2 points. One is, please don't confuse an explanation with believing in Meta as being the future of this. I'm on record in the FT as saying that it's an act of desperation for Facebook to do this. So what I was trying to illustrate is that we're living a semi-metaverse reality now, and so I don't know why people have struggled so much with the concept. The second part of it is, I think what's flawed in your logic is that the metaverse is not a place. So Facebook is a place we go to and you can get out of it. So think of social media as the metaverse. Because I go onto Facebook, my kids don't get out of social media, they go into a new dimension, which is Instagram or the next best thing. So when I'm referring to metaverse, I'm referring to the whole analogous social media concept, right? So there will be places in the metaverse for old people, there will be older people, there will be places in the metaverse for young people, and in between, I think.
All right, well, thank you for that. I'm glad that we have our resident Italian American here.
We're good friends, so don't worry.
But I do want to circle back to the infrastructure that you mentioned. So we'll take a little tab and put that on there. I do want to pick up something that Matteo had mentioned, and that is, what other applications are there of the metaverse besides maybe gaming or so forth? So what commercial applications might there be? For example, we saw that Seoul, South Korea announced that it will be the first major city to launch a digital twin by the end of this year or the first of next year, in which their citizens can send their avatars to go take care of government services. So somebody from like me, who's originally from Los Angeles, I'd have to spend an hour driving to court, $60, $75 parking, half a day waiting for a judge, and then another the drive back. That would be an entire day of my time. Whereas with my avatar, I could go send this and take care of going to probate court in just a matter of a few minutes. I'd love to hear from the panelists here on what are your ideas about other applications of NFTs or the metaverse other than gaming? Do we see more of a commercial opportunity or government opportunity? Or maybe talk about some financial use cases that we might see NFTs moving into, such as DeFi.
So I'm happy to kick things off, and maybe one application that's very close to our heart now is, I'm sure you're all following the political situation that's happening in Europe. People are literally leaving their homes very fast. Many times they didn't have the time to grab their passport, yeah? So when they show up at the border at the neighboring countries and say, please let me in, because we're in a difficult situation, doesn't matter from which side you come, I think the opportunity to use Metaverse or NFTs in the context of digital identity is a massive one, where the governments will maybe struggle to do that, because the governments who should be doing that maybe have other issues, yeah? So the reason why I'm mentioning this, because I think maybe now we're a bit more sensitive to that, but the refugee crisis has been going on for, I mean, many, many years now. It's just because it's now in Europe, people are more closer to that, and they can identify with that easier. But I would really throw out a concept of digital identity, especially in the crisis, in the context of, to be very provocative, Ukrainian and Russian crisis.
Actually, Anton, that's a fabulous example. Just on a personal note, I was involved very much with the Afghan crisis and helping women and girls evacuate the country. And they would send to me in this process all of their personal information, from passports to medical records and so forth. So I had sitting on my laptop all of this personal information, and I should probably burn my laptop at this point, but you're absolutely right, that is such a tremendous opportunity. How about you, Matteo?
I think I understand why the conversation, particularly in the public eye around NFT, focused initially on sort of art and music, and then has accelerated into the collectible space and gaming and so on. But I'm actually surprised that they haven't picked up yet on the implications for finance in particular. For those of you, I've been in asset management, traditional asset management for 35 years, and much of the the financial ecosystem, in my mind, in 10 years will be all be operating through the blockchain and NFTs, identifying structured products, fixed income products, loans, mortgages, everything will be NFT'd. So I think, as we look, if there's investors in the room that are looking for, maybe an underexploited area of this whole NFT conversation to invest in, I think the application of NFTs in finance is something that we'll hear a lot more about in the coming years.
Yeah, great.
And unfortunately, I think it'll be the big institutions that'll start the conversation, like the JP Morgans and Morgan Stanleys and so on. But yeah.
And that makes sense. All of the digital information that's necessary for those transactions will have to be built on the backbone of a blockchain.
I actually know of a guy right now who's setting up a fund in the UK, and it's going to be NFT, and there's not going to be normal shares and subscription process. You buy the NFT as a sort of a token representation of your percentage of the fund. So it's slightly different than tokenization, but the idea that you have all of your personal data and the conditions of your investment in that NFT.
Thank you. What about you, Karthik? Because I know your company specializes as one of the services in NFT development, and you have access to business infrastructure. What are your thoughts?
So as I was telling you, this is a new interface to doing things, and big brands want to be in a place where their demographic are hanging out. And the demographic, typically for young brands, they're all in the metaverse now. They're all in Sandbox, they're in Decentraland, they are in all types of metaverses. So one of the things that we also do is basically building, identifying the right land, the right property for them to buy, and then help build the infrastructure for them there. And that's exploding. That part of our business is exploding like crazy. The second thing, of course, is a more fundamental idea, because on the one hand, we have a development company that does software development. On the other hand, we have a fund that does the investing. And so a more fundamental idea is that Clayton Christensen, not Clayton, but I think Henrik Brunolfsson wrote this book called Race Against the Machine, where he talks about how everything is getting automated. And so we're looking at zero people factories, we're looking at 3D printing and all of that. So I think the next 10 years, the real value is in human creativity. So, we hold a huge amount of assets, like hundreds of assets now, building a massive portfolio of collectible and art. And I think these are, the next, big projects, because the artists are the ones that are, going to make the most money because of the age of the artists, because everything else that is rudimentary will be automated by artificial intelligence and 3D printing and all that stuff. So our fundamental thesis for coin stratagem is the idea that the human beings will evolve from, this idea of self-esteem to self-actualization to peak experiences, which is to unlock the real human potential of bringing out human creativity, which is what we're seeing in the crypto space, whether it's Bored Ape Society or, CryptoPunks or, metaverses like Pavia. There are a lot of very exciting innovations that are coming where you're looking at human creativity at a very different level altogether, which we've not seen so far, So, and that's our thesis about the space.
Great. And Carl, I know that you are an innovator, leader, trailblazer, and I'm going to say you are the resident representative of the young on stage right here. What are your thoughts about where we see NFTs and innovation other than gaming?
In the metaverse.
Yes.
Yes. I think that essentially anything that is a business model in the real world probably could be a business model in the metaverse. So anything easy as e-commerce, or the commerce in general, you sell digital clothes or digital whatever, and even digital legal help. I don't know, in the metaverse, it's going to be a parallel world where I think it's going to be the same as the real world eventually. It's going to take a long time, but it's going to be a separate world, and I think many people will kind of live more there than in the real world. So at the end of the day, all of the services and goods that are used in the real world will have to also exist there. But it will take a long time before that happens, I think.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that. I purchased my last 2 cars online. I didn't even step foot on a dealership. So I'm really looking forward to the day when I can purchase my car in the metaverse and have much more of that 3D experience. And I think you're absolutely right. Where anything that has to do with e-commerce will be in the metaverse, hopefully sooner than later. So I'm going to actually start with you again, Carl, because I know that you might have to leave us shortly. You obviously are a trailblazer in cryptocurrency and an entrepreneur and an expert on cryptocurrency. My question to you is, are we because of world events, are we in a bear market? And if we are in a bear market, how will that impact metaverse and NFT development?
Well, first of all, I think that anything in crypto is very dependent on Bitcoin. When Bitcoin is going up, everything else is going up. When it goes down, everything else goes down. And I think we have some very tragic things going on in the world. But at the end of the day, Bitcoin is the only very safe place to put your money if you feel like the world is in uncertain times. So, for example, if you are in certain countries today, your bank account can get frozen, your gold bullion can get confiscated, but your Bitcoin can't. You can literally cross borders with millions of dollars in your brain by putting your private key. You can memorize your key there, and it's just very portable, very, very easy to transact. You cannot censor it. So I think that people more and more will turn towards Bitcoin, which we already see right now. It's proven right now that we're seeing the adoption in certain countries go up now because of this. So the fundamentals of Bitcoin, first of all, have never been stronger than they are today. And the use case and the demand for Bitcoin has never been stronger than it is today. And I see no reason to believe that we're ever gonna go back to a stable world, because of course the monetary system is breaking as we speak right here. It's breaking slowly enough that people don't realize it maybe on a daily basis, but inflation will soon escalate into hyperinflation, and at that point the monetary system will collapse. And some people think gold will take over. I think Bitcoin will take over, because Bitcoin is a much better gold than gold itself. Just like, I mean, you can say that we've used gold for thousands of years, and that's a long price history, but you can also say that we were traveling with horses for thousands of years, but that doesn't mean that people use horses in Dubai today. People use cars, because cars is a better technology. Bitcoin is a better technology than gold. If you think that Bitcoin is going to go to $5, $6, $7 million per coin, then you have to also be bullish on the whole crypto industry as a whole. I think Metaverse, NFTs, all of that is going to get, elevated by Bitcoin. It's a huge flood.
Yes, makes sense. So as cryptocurrency becomes more widely adopted, then we will anticipate seeing the metaverse and NFTs becoming more widely adopted as well. Are you able to stay with us for a few more minutes, or do you need to take off?
I can sit a few more minutes.
Okay, all right. Well, then I'm going to switch over to you, Anton, because we were talking about perhaps more of a widely adopted metaverse as crypto becomes more adopted. But we do know that, unfortunately, and I'm going to talk about NFTs, and I'm sure this also applies to the metaverse, the NFT space is a nascent industry, and it's fraught with a lot of fraud and scams as well, including, I think many of us are familiar with the concept of washing. And I'd love for you to go into that a little bit more in detail. And how can a potential investor avoid being a victim of some of these fraudulent activities?
Yeah. So just to mention, so what you refer to is wash trading, meaning generating trading activity, which is completely fake because it doesn't hold any economic substance, meaning doesn't provide the right price for it. And wash trading is prevalent in the NFT space the same way it is still on certain centralized and decentralized exchanges. So just want to say this is nothing new, and even happens in traditional financial markets. But in the NFT space, it's really extreme. Now the question is, like, why do then people fake volume? Now there was a study done by PwC actually that demonstrated that most NFTs are traded twice in their lifetime. So all the stuff that you never hear about that kind of dies out are traded twice on average. So that means I mint it, maybe I'm lucky to sell it to you, you sell it to the next person, and that's it. So this was your typical average unsuccessful NFT collection gets traded, each NFT itself gets traded twice. So the rationale in a lot of people was, well, why don't we generate a lot of volume, that's fake obviously, because we want to demonstrate that our NFT collection is highly successful. So that is the reason why people do it, and they can do it because NFTs are mostly, pretty much in any country that you can imagine out there, are unregulated, and the marketplaces where you trade them are also highly unregulated, meaning you can do that. Now obviously, as a market maker who wants to provide liquidity, or an investor who wants to buy an NFT, this is really a difficult situation because you don't have true data. You have things that you cannot use in your pricing models as a methodology how you want to value something. And then the question is, why would a market maker or anyone else want to price an NFT? Well, first is, well, do I buy an NFT or not? Is it undervalued or is it overvalued? So this is obviously a reasonable thing you want to ask if you're an investor. The second thing is with successful NFTs actually, like CryptoPunks, for instance, or any other one that you heard about, people take out loans against those NFTs. So if I have an NFT that's worth 100 grand, maybe I can take a loan that's worth $50,000. But obviously, I need some solidity that this NFT is valued $100,000. And the last thing why pricing is extremely important, why volume is an issue, is because, for instance, like funds actually need to have a valuation on a daily basis, monthly basis, or whatnot. They need to say how much is their portfolio valued. And obviously, if you have a lot of fake economic activity, this adds no value to anyone. Now, over long term and short term and even mid term, this will stop, mainly because the marketplaces will become more regulated. So this is kind of what I would like to open a discussion around that, but maybe the other participants can comment as well.
I mean, I think there's a couple of things to like peel away there. One is that we have to remember that in any new young, I mean, I think we see such a velocity of evolution in this industry and the digital assets in general, NFTs, that people get impatient, and 2 years seems like a long time. But if we compare it to even remotely to any other traditional sector and the development, the time it takes, it's moving at light speed, but it's still incredibly young industry across the board, crypto assets included. So, and in every new industry, there's fraud, there's misrepresentation, there's regulation that comes to play, but what makes this, in particular, this development more complicated is that it's not a simple financial instrument. It's a collectible, technically, so therefore, so far, the bulk of the market. So it has the regulators and even financial players scratching their heads as to how to think about it because it's being used as a financial instrument. So it's bridging the old and the new in the most direct way possible. It's taking something that is a collectible and now it's become a financial instrument that you can pledge in financial transactions and DeFi platforms and so on. So this is what's A, confusing, B, gives the opportunity for a lot of abuse in the shorter term. But I agree with you. I believe, not only regulators, but also the system will figure out like we did. 'Cause I remember when I got into crypto, which is, wasn't that long ago compared to many in the room, I'm sure. The conversation of how to custody your assets was the fundamental question in every conversation when I talk to investors about it. So, well, where do I keep it? Now that's kind of not even on the table anymore. There's several solutions that are regulated, that are solid, and I believe that NFTs will follow the same process. We'll get players in that'll provide really good technology to protect the assets.
Yeah, thanks. Oh, go ahead.
Maybe I can just add something. I also want to point out that lack of regulation is not necessarily a bad thing, because when you don't have a highly regulated industry, you can innovate extremely fast. You can try out things, it doesn't work, you try something else. Now imagine doing that if you're a highly regulated bank. I mean, you would talk to the regulators for 6 months to educate them before you would roll out the product. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but obviously the problem is then that you can do whatever you want. Yeah. And that's where we will find each other over a couple of years with infrastructure players that have trust.
Yeah, and that's a great setup for Karthik. We've talked a little bit about how regulation may need to move into the space. Matteo hit that this is collectibles, it's still very new, nascent industry. Karthik, because of your expertise helping businesses launch their own NFT initiatives, so you see from a different perspective, I'd love to hear from you how you think NFT investing may require deeper understanding than crypto investing. And then could you help us identify some of the risks that are involved with the NFT investing? And
It's a great
Karthik, if you don't mind just holding the microphone a little bit lower so the rest of the panelists can hear you.
Is this better? Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
Fantastic. So I think it's a great question, first of all, to start with. And as I said, there is a difference between being a technical expert and spending the time, because the brain takes a lot of time to process information and for knowledge to become wisdom, right? From data to become information, information to become knowledge, knowledge to wisdom. So what do I mean by that? I've spent 10 years in the space. I've seen projects come and go. I've invested, I've made money, I've lost money. So there's a difference between being a collector who wants to buy something because he likes something and an institutional investor who wants to make serious money out of this. So one of the bad advices that a lot of people give to NFT collectors is that buy something that you like. Don't think about anything else. That's the fastest way to lose money. Because, the way to make money is, there are two fundamental rules. One is Metcalfe's law. The other one is log linear power law. So Metcalfe's law basically states that the value of a network is the square of the number of people connected to the network. The most successful projects, platforms, NFT communities are ones that are very robust, very active community. Like, for example, Bored Apes and Ada Ape Society and quite a few others, CryptoPunks. So the other ones have come and gone. They're like fireflies. You have the flavor of the season and they vanish. So it's very important to really understand Metcalfe's law, because it basically determines the value of some of these things. And second thing is, how do you de-risk this thing? What is your value at risk model? Because there are a lot of people who trade and they lose money. The way to make money in crypto is holding on these things for very long periods of time. And so there are no value investing models. Like, Benjamin Graham wrote this Intelligent Investor where he talks about securities analysis, and net present value, discounted cash flow analysis. There are models like that. There's a talk that I gave in 2018, a master class. People can Google it, Karthik Iyer Tokenomics. It's a 3-hour master class on identifying the right tokenomics model. What is the volume? What is the velocity? How do you arrive at value? Right now, it's a random number. Why do you have 7,000 items? Because it's a random number. How is this going to go up in value? We don't know, So there has to be a scientific methodology that's applied to some of these things. And so I think the community is very important. Creators are very important. The art is very important. So we have a very evolved model because, as I said, time is very important. And without time, you cannot do anything. Time is the heart of existence, right? I mean, it's not space; it's time. And so that is the merit of what we have done over the last 12 years in this space, is to see a lot of these things come and go, and learn and improvise and build these models. And hopefully we'll start publishing some of these things, like we did with the tokenomics masterclass, because we realized nobody knew why they had 1 billion tokens or 100 million tokens. So we gave the masterclass. So we're going to do something similar with the whole NFT thing, where we'll talk about valuation models and risk models and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. There's so many times where I've heard people say, oh, I'm buying this cryptocurrency, and I'll say, well, why? And, oh, because I like it, or I like the meme, and it's, as you mentioned, that's perhaps one of the more dangerous ways to invest is just this gut, I like it, versus really understanding the fundamentals of that. So I'm going to turn over to Matteo, because Matteo here represents the NFT investor. I'd like to ask you, Matteo, Wave Financial was the first to launch an NFT fund that purchased 70% in NFTs and 30% in infrastructure itself. What are the things that an investor should look for when they're investing in a fund as it relates to what Karthik said, which are some of the quantifiable measures? Are there other measures that investors should look at?
First thing I'd like to do is just outline a strong conviction I have. And when people who are outside the industry come to me and talk to me about how do I invest in digital assets, I say you have to accept the difference and understand and be self-aware enough to understand the difference between investing and speculating. Most people are speculating; they're not investing, and that's okay as long as you're aware you're doing it. It's like anything, as long as you're aware you're doing it, it's all fine. But if you think you're investing when you don't know anything about the underlying asset, but you think it's cool, that's speculation. And I speculate. I buy some small cap coins just because a friend of mine told me he or she thinks they're going to go up, and I buy them. And I'm speculating. But I think investing requires analytic analysis, understanding the characteristics of the market, supply and demand, and all those things. So in NFT, I think it's even more crucial. It's done in a different way because we don't have all the data and the historical data sets that we have naturally available to us in a lot of other types of assets. It's relatively new. So the way Wave launched this fund was it focused on sort of 3 key components when looking at value. And one is looking at the sort of being fundamental, taking as much fundamental data as you can using AI and some of the tools out there to understand the most common attributes, for example, of some collectibles, and then valuing those and trying to buy things that should appreciate in value. The second is then to look, and also to look at utility, and when we talk about utility, it's really that bridging that gap from the first stage of NFTs to second in terms of collectibles. Something looks cool, and then what can it be used for, right? So another aspect we look at also is in the metaverse, we look also at the infrastructure. We invest part of the fund, 30% of the fund invests in the infrastructure and what's called the plumbing and the platforms that will make a lot of this possible. But I think that the secret sauce, the most important thing today, and this may, as industries develop, will become less important, but it's this being in the community, being deep in the community. There is absolutely no substitute right now in this moment in time to identify up and coming projects, artists, new platforms. It is akin, in my mind. Many of you may not. This may not resonate, but in the early days of commodity trading, it was very much a club where you were trading with your buddies, and your buddies knew what was happening with the price of commodities, and you were ahead of the trade. And this smells and feels very much like that. If you're close in that NFT community, you know who's hot, you know what's coming, and pretending, being on the outside and pretending you can replicate that somehow by talking to lots of people, I just don't think is realistic. And so, we've been so far very successful. It's the early days.
So
but
what if
it's worked.
somebody wants to buy an NFT and they're not a part of the
Yeah,
community?
and I think the other, that's a good point. The other thing that entered in the philosophy of why we set up this fund was because actually one of the main portfolio managers had been picking NFTs for his own portfolio really from the early days, and a lot of his friends said to him, why don't you, put this into some sort of structure that we can invest in, because you seem to have a really good understanding of the space. And this light bulb went off with us, and we realized that, if you're going to invest, it goes back to that issue: are you going to invest? Or are you going to speculate? What is the opportunity for most people who are not deep in the space to invest in this huge and fast-growing space? How do you do it? You can go on OpenSea and buy some stuff and not really know what you're doing, and talk to friends. Or you have to rely on experts, and that's what we do without even thinking about it in the financial sector, right? Nobody who doesn't understand finance says, I think I'm going to go buy some bonds and I'm going to go buy some stocks because I think I know better than everybody. They say, okay, I'm going to pay somebody who's an expert, and that was kind of the philosophy we used: was we have this expertise, let's bring it to bear, for investors to use.
You're going to say something, Anton?
Just wanted to reflect on something that you said that we can all identify is like how important it is liking someone is when you invest into an illiquid asset. So if you're familiar with early stage venture investments, so when early stage funds invest into equity of companies, one of the key reasons why they do that is because they like you. They usually say we like the founders, yeah? So I would really ask us to reflect how important our emotions are when you invest in illiquid asset. And the reason why that is because you're going to be stuck with it for potentially quite a long time. So liking your investment better be one of the key reasons why I do that. Even I hear that from professional venture investors, so maybe a controversial thought.
How about you, Carl? Do you think that there's more liking an investment or more quantitative understanding the investment as it relates to NFTs?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, so we've been talking about, Matteo's been saying, well, there's a difference between speculating and investing, and investing may lean in more towards really understanding from a quantitative perspective the potential returns on that investment. But we've also heard a lot in the community, as Karthik mentioned, people saying just buy an NFT because you like it. So what are your thoughts when someone goes to purchase an NFT to invest in an NFT?
Well, I bought one CryptoPunk, I bought a Bored Ape, and I bought a few different NFTs. When I bought my CryptoPunk, I made approximately 60 seconds of research. So I can't say that I did any quantitative crunching of numbers or anything. I just bought it. Yeah, and now I have it. It's how NFTs is, I think, right now. It's a bubble, I think. I bought it because I felt FOMO.
Well, I would say, Carl, maybe you've got the Midas touch. So it looks like...
Sorry, I just want to say one thing. I totally agree with you, by the way. So I'm not disagreeing with you, but when you say it's a bubble, I think, again, we've got to start using the right language. It's like when people say cryptocurrencies. I mean, it means everything, and to me, it means everything and nothing. We're talking about digital assets, and there's a big difference between, as you said, Bitcoin and the role that Bitcoin is going to play in the future, and Tezos, and Cardano, and Ethereum, right? And so we use this, NFTs, and in most people, I would think, in this audience like me, associate Bored Apes, CryptoKitties, all this stuff. But that's not NFTs. NFT makes possible lots of things. That's one use case, which is really important and is very, very hot. And that probably is a bubble. I would agree with you. But there's a lot of other stuff coming down the pike, and all of the utility of this stuff in the metaverse, which I don't believe at all is a bubble, and I believe it's just the beginning. We're just starting, and it's gonna...
I agree that NFTs as a technology is of course going to continue to be a thing, but yes, there's a lot of over-speculation on certain assets and collections and apes and dogs and kitties. Yeah.
Well, this is a perfect way to end the discussion that this might be a bubble, but at the same time, we're really at the beginning. In fact, I think we're at that first snow crystal at the very top of an iceberg of potential opportunities for the metaverse. And I always love to say thank you so much to our panelists, and I'd also like to say, imagine if Walt Disney were alive today and what he would create in the metaverse. We're really at just the beginning of its potential. So with that, I wanted to thank Carl, Karthik, Matteo, and Anton. Thank you so much for all of your information.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
It was a pleasure.